colleagues said this afternoon that there is something called African time, and he is not a supporter of the other time. I believe it is appropriate that we offer apologies for our 1 hour and 15 minute non-African delayed time. Like our distinguished former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, who took the time to join us and to offer his support and solidarity, our minister has done likewise. Of course, we have had the pleasure at our first conference to hear from Minister of Culture of Barbados, Minister Lashley, and now we are honored to hear Minister Lisa Hanna. She requires no introduction in this part of the world, but she's entirely deserving of one. I have known her for as many years as it will be impolite to say. Suffice it to say that I knew her as a student in a Faculty of Humanities at the Mona campus, and she was distinguished even then for her commitment, for her maturity, and her sense of responsibility for the discourses at hand. I'm very proud that she has followed that trajectory into the service of the people of Jamaica, the Caribbean, and beyond. The responsibility of a Minister of Culture, especially in Jamaica, is a very serious one, because we have all in this region been the beneficiary of cultural exchange, articulation, and energy that has come out of Jamaican society, which is the largest of our African communities in the Anglophone part of this world. That is a tremendous responsibility to sit on top of what is clearly a volcano. It is important for us to recognize that, because if you are sitting on a volcano, you can either lead it or it will remove you. And we have no doubt that Minister Hanna will manage, guide, inspire, energize that energy which is Jamaican, African Jamaican culture and civilization in that society. She is already a senior member of one of the oldest political parties in this region, the People's National Party, that have given us not only Norman and Michael, but as you've heard, also the Honorable PJ. And we heard Natasha speaking earlier today about, issuing a lamentation about the minority female voice in this gathering. And quite correctly, she had every right to say so, because in the context of slavery, we do know that women, African women, carried the brunt of enslavement in the Caribbean. That is true, and we should not be speaking generically about slavery, because the experiences of African women were fundamentally different from the experiences of African men. Her political party is led by an extraordinary woman, and there is that voice, and we have a cabinet with a Minister of Culture who is also an extraordinary woman. And between the two of them, dare anyone to say that the woman's voice in Jamaica is silent? So it's a pleasure indeed, Minister, to have you. Thank you for being with us. We know that you could be many other places doing many other things, but you have recognized the importance and the significance of this. We are looking forward to your leadership into the future. We know that this is hard work. We know that some politicians might believe their careers will be adversely affected by disassociation, but we know that this reparations struggle is not a popularity contest. But then again, you have been there and done that. And therefore, Minister, we welcome you. Please address the gathering.
Thank you, Professor Beckles. I just want to say how happy I am to be here. I know it's a little hot for everybody, and so I won't endeavor to speak for very long. But I want to just say a very special welcome to the visiting delegation from Martinique, as well as other non-CARICOM nations. I think all of us as a Caribbean community, as one family from the various CARICOM committees, have worked together before, and we will continue to work in dialogue. I'm here by virtue of the stellar work being done by my own CARICOM, reparations committee, chaired by Professor Vereen Shepherd. And I really also want to congratulate her for the work that she has done, not only in this area, but congratulate her for the work that she did in making sure that there was a decade for slavery recognized by the United Nations. So, as we would say in Jamaica, big up Professor Shepherd, enough respect. Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to you not as a Minister of Culture for Jamaica, but certainly as a Minister of Youth. I represent a population and certainly a cohort that has its world at its fingertips by just pressing the button send. And what all of us need to recognize sitting in this room is that we are never going to get the idea of reparations lobbied globally unless we have the youth vote and the youth momentum behind it. Today, what you're actually witnessing is that the world will produce about 3.5 zettabytes of information. That is more information than the world has seen in the last 5,000 years. There are actually tests now being done on third-generation fiber optics, where one fiber optic cable can carry more than 10 trillion bits of information per second. Today, there are about 100 billion searches on Google, and YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. You kind of ask yourself, what were we doing before we had Google and YouTube? What's even more interesting is that at any given moment, there are about 175 million people connected to Facebook. If Facebook were a country, it would be the third largest country in the world. So you're recognizing that technology is actually changing the way we live and the way we work. And it's certainly changing a cohort of people that we're trying to get their attention in the way that they're plugged into and the way that they're connected. All of them are plugged into one kind of technology or another. The interesting thing and the irony is that what it has done is that it has also changed the employment patterns of the way the world works. And so the top 10 in-demand jobs in 2013 did not exist in 2003. So in your history, and as we sit here talking about history, we're actually making history now because we have 4 different generations of people working together. We have what is called the traditionalist that will say, write me. You have the baby boomer that will say, call me. You have the Generation X that will say, email me. And you have the millennial, which is my generation that I serve, which says, text me. Because everything now is about texting. So where does that leave this conversation? It leaves it in a very precarious place. Because on the one hand, what you have to recognize is that the priorities of young people in any country, in particular in the Caribbean, is about career advancement and about employment. 63% of all youth interviewed in Jamaica via the National Youth Survey said that career advancement is their most important objective. So I frame it that way because one of the things you have to understand is that if you're going to move the reparations discussion forward, you have to get on the youth agenda. And I dare say you're not on the youth agenda at this point. Just look around the room. Who in here is under 24?
Wishes to be.
You have a 17-year-old.
There's one 17-year-old, and I'm happy for that 17-year-old. Interestingly, you're really swimming against the tide. And why I say you're swimming against the tide is because as we sit here, 25% of persons with the highest IQ in China are more than the total population of North America. In India, it's 28%. India has more children on the honor roll than America has children. What are our children learning about Africa? Well, we're learning about genocide, or we have learned about genocide. We have learned about AIDS coming out of Africa. We've learned now, and God bless Africa, about Ebola. It's very, very good to hear about the positive things that come out of a conference like this. But the interesting thing is that you have to lower the altitude. If you're going to connect with young people, you have to lower the altitude and start creating the messages that they will be interested in hearing. Now, whether or not some of you actually agreed with what was known as the ALS challenge, the fact is it got the world's attention. Something very silly as throwing water on the top of your head got a global movement of people, including myself, throwing water on the top of our head. I met 3 Antiguan young people who said, "We loved your ALS challenge." I didn't know them, but they saw it on YouTube. Now, as a minister, I deal with policy, and I have to implement a number of programs that, on the one hand, has a face-to-face connection with youth, but on the other one, has to reach them in their space. And so one of the things that we had to do was move our online registration last year, and we did it in the Ministry of Youth, from 46,000 online registered users of our website to 116,000 this year, and it's climbing. One of the things that is very, very clear is that young people are not going to read your brochures. They need small bites of information. It needs to be young, it needs to be sexy, it needs to be hip, it needs to be different. And one of the things that you have to be honest about is that when you look at the top 10 searches on Google, certainly for the past number of weeks, reparations doesn't even feature on it. What you see is football, what you see is stars, what you see is a reality star that got sentenced to jail. We have to find a way to get into that space. That is a space that you need that global lobby to start. And in addition to all the traditional things that you're doing, the academic discussions and the like, you need to now identify in your media, in your communications, a strategy to reach this global movement. The world this year will witness the largest population of young people it has ever seen in its history. Young people between the ages of 15 to 24 make up a quarter of the world's population. Every year, 121 million of them turn 16 and start looking for jobs. 75 million of them are unemployed. So if you're throwing the reparations, and all of you in here are very well respected in your fields, and this is something that you've fought for passionately, but I don't want to see you die in vain and it is not recognized. And so you need to merge and find a way to pull the other generation with you so that you can have that discussion and you can have it well. The other thing that I would say to you is be scientific about the way that we are going to discuss this as an outcome. And when I say scientific, the Caribbean is a wonderful space. Not only were we instrumental in different ways of getting democracy in African countries, and we did it very simply. We did it with our political leaders, We did it with our athletes, and we did it with our musicians. We did it and we helped with the war in Angola. We did it with Zimbabwe. We did it with South Africa. And so it's not out of the realm of imagination to get it done with reparations, and I believe it and I support it. But we're not utilizing our best assets. Jamaica boasts Usain Bolt. Everybody in China and some of the largest economies recognize Bolt. Bolt has an Instagram following of over 1 million people. Imagine if he had on a reparations t-shirt that said freedom for my African brothers, or let's pay back what is owed to us. In addition to that, Barbados has Rihanna. Rihanna has made history with being the #1 artist for online downloads of music in the world, in the history of the world. She's from Barbados. We have Damian Marley, and I could go on. And you have other artists, certainly, that utilize. When I was in France the other day, I went to a concert way out in some area and was listening to traditional zouk and all kinds of French Caribbean music, and you should have seen the amount of young people there. So you have to be scientific about the discussion. You have to now start using people that they will listen to. I mean, Professor Beckles look good enough, but I'm not going to cut it in a certain group. Right? So you have to now identify and be honest with ourselves. Be very honest with ourselves in the positioning that we are going to position the argument and who we're going to be using to frame that argument. The last thing I would say is this. You can't go and expect to ask Britain for reparations when some of the same laws that Britain gave us are still on our books today in some of our own countries. It's redundant. We still have laws on our books in terms of health care, in terms of teachers' leave with salary, in terms of a number of things that are remnants. Britain has already gotten rid of them. If you are going to demonstrate that we are actually a progressive thinking, academic conglomerate of nations, then you now have to be moving with progressive legislation. Some of our countries are doing it. One of the things that we have done in Jamaica recently is said that for 2 ounces of ganja, we are not going to criminalize a young person. Because what has happened, and we're moving to now look at medical marijuana, industrialized hemp, research, and all of that legislation is coming because at the end of the day, we believe that we must never do something that is not going to be in the best interest, especially of our young people. Now, nobody's going out there to say full legalization of marijuana. We're not at that point. But one of the things that was carried was, look, and smoking for religious purposes from all of my Rastafarian brethren in the back. One of the things that was very clear is that a lot of young people were being marginalized because they now had a criminal record for a spliff. So in terms of reparatory justice, one of the things that we also recognize as a country is that we have to start revolutionizing how we deal with our own legislation. And so we've been actively pursuing very progressive legislation now in Jamaica. So one of the things that I think has to come out of this body is recommending as a start, revisiting some of our legislation that has been there and that has been sanctioned still by the church. Right? The same church that many of you talk about, and in 1 or 2 of my history courses at university I listen to. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think all of us can agree that we're here on one mission. And we're all here for the same purpose. I don't know that we know the atrocities, we understand them, we know the benefits. What we now need is a strategy. And the strategy that I'm suggesting is you have to have a global lobby and campaign that involves young people. You have to utilize the best assets of the Caribbean to tell your message. And the final thing is that you have to understand that before you can ask another country to do something for you, you have to demonstrate that you're light years ahead of them for protecting your own people first. Thank you all so much.